All right, UFC Iowa, my good buddy Bo Nickal. It's been a minute. How you been, brother? It's good to see you, right? It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to be back fighting. I'm excited for this card. Originally, after my last fight, I wanted to fight a little bit earlier, early 25, but the UFC wanted me in Iowa, which I'm excited about. So yeah, grateful to be here.
And are we gonna get some Bo chants this week, right? We're gonna hear some of those.
I think we will. I'm hoping so. We'll see. Of course, I think that being in Iowa, we have a lot of big wrestling fan base, and I know the event's sold out, so I think that I'm not really too sure what the response will be, but either way, whether it's cheers or boos, I'll be excited.
And how's the weight? Because I heard we're 2 days out and you're walking around at about 220 pounds, right?
Yeah, so this last camp, I put a lot of effort into bulking up. I wanted to get a little bit bigger, eating a bunch of steaks, potatoes, that type of thing, and the weight cut is a little tougher. I might have gone a little too far with the bulk, but it is what it is, and we're here now, so got to get it down.
Now, let's get into this a little bit, because I'm a guy who I know UFC, but I haven't dabbled too much into the college wrestling world. You know what I mean? And if there's one guy to talk about it, it's you. And if there's one guy that is pretty good on Twitter and is pretty good at, you know what I mean, like clapping back when people talk some shit about him, right? I need to hear the full story, because I feel like the wrestling community needs to hear this story too, right? So give me the whole Dylan Palacio, give me this whole beef that's going on there.
Yeah. Dylan, he's a good dude. He's a funny guy. I think he's actually a big fan of me. So, because of that, I like to reply to him, kind of clap back at each other. We have a lot of mutual friends and stuff like that. But yeah, basically, I think that, there was a little bit of a situation with another Cornell wrestler and a Penn State wrestler. I got my guys back. He got his guys back. I had to, put him in his place a little bit. But, he's kind of a crazy guy. Just, makes a lot of stuff up online, and just – I thought we were going to have a little bit of a back and forth where it was I'll say something, he'll say something, and he just said a bunch of basically lies. Just I was like, all right, bro, I'm not even going to respond to that at this point, because you're going totally off the deep end. But yeah, no, I don't really have a problem with him. I think he's a decent enough guy, does a lot of good for the wrestling community, a lot of charity work, and so I think that it's good overall. You need to see more of that in wrestling.
So it started with Meyer Shapiro, right? Because one of your boys beat him, right?
Yeah. So basically, our wrestler at Penn State, Tyler Kasak, beat Meyer Shapiro at Cornell, and he came out saying that because Tyler is really, really strong, that he kind of implied he was on steroids, which in my mind was kind of classless and baseless. You make accusations like that, and I think that you should face some consequences, because that's 100% not true, and also just very low class in my opinion. So I came to the defense of my guy, and then Dylan kind of came out of nowhere, and so it was just a whole thing. But again, I think in the wrestling community, you need more of that. You need more drama, more storylines, more excitement. It builds up the sport, and we're always have been taught to be humble and stay quiet, which I think is important as well. But I think there's also times when you need to kind of stand up for yourself and stick to your guns and stand up for the people, your teammates and your friends.
And then going back to the bulking thing, right? RDR, you said you haven't seen him this week, but I can tell you from the past two fights, big guy, right? Big guy.
100%.
They put out the numbers from his last fight, the day of the weigh-in, and then the day of the fight. And I think he had something like 21 pounds on Kevin Holland. He was 212 pounds. So, I mean, he's a big guy, but I think, 220-pound Bo Nickal, size isn't going to matter.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident with the size. Of course, he was very similar size to my last opponent, Paul Craig. I think Paul Craig walked into the cage over 220, right? And so, I mean, he's, in my mind, probably the biggest middleweight, not one of the biggest middleweights. And so that's something that I think my last fight will prepare me for. And like I said, I'm putting on that weight, putting that size on. Maybe I'll hit Mr. Olympia competition after this. So, we'll see. The bulk went a little far. I might keep going with it.
Listen, I'm so done with the Bo Nickal criticism. I'm so over it at this point. You know what I mean? Because the guy goes out there and he fights smart for 3 rounds against Paul Craig. And like you said, you get octagon experience, which it's probably the most valuable thing in the sport is octagon experience. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So for people to give you the criticism that they have, considering what you've done in all of your last fights, I don't think it's fair. You've talked about it multiple times, but do you think that's a thing that's going to follow you your entire career? Like, it seems to be going that way with Paddy Pimblett. Do you think you're going to get the similar treatment?
Yeah, of course. That's, I think, it's part of the game. It's part of what I do. Teddy Roosevelt said it best with his poem, "The Man in the Arena." Right? It's not the critic that counts. And so I feel like for me, I just try to focus on myself and being the best version of myself every day. And I think that eventually a lot of those people will get to know me better. Things like this, interviews, continuing to put out content, continue to build my reputation in the sport is something that's really important. And I'm a guy that I'm all about discipline, hard work, getting after it, gratitude, enjoying what I do. And I think that the more that people can kind of get to know me, the more they'll see that and appreciate it. And really, I'm only doing this because I love it and I enjoy it. And so when I hear boos or when I hear criticism, it gets to me a little bit because this is very personal for me. Like, I love what I do. And so, with that being said, I do try to take a very realistic view of where I can improve and get better. And I think a lot of times that's going back to talking with my coaches, my teammates, people that I trust and know, and then focusing on that. But I think that the criticism, again, it's part of the sport, and I'll take it with a grain of salt. And I think all the greats were criticized. I've been watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, for the second or third time, and he faced a lot of that as a multiple-time world champion, one of the best athletes of all time. And so I think that if you look at a guy like that had to go through it, what I'm going through is very minuscule in comparison. So I feel prepared for it, and it's part of the job.
You took it personally, right?
Yeah, it's very personal for me. That's something that I think that I took from that documentary, where he made it personal. He made his career, his passion, his job. It's personal, right? Every training session, the way he pushed his teammates, the way he pushed himself, you take things personally. I think that's important in a certain sense, but at the same time, you do have to be able to, let things go and move on and continue to progress towards what you want to achieve, right? Like, if you let the criticism and stuff hold you back and gnaw away at you, then it becomes a negative. But if you let it become a motivator and a fuel, I think then it's a positive.
Last one, brother. What do you think of the state of this division right now? Because there's a lot of things up in the air. You got Kyle Bahio calling for a title shot, but it looks like we might get him and Imavov. You got Whitaker's name in there.
Right.
We got DDP Hamzat that's apparently scheduled, but nothing's written down yet.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we got Bilal Muhammad talking on Twitter saying, hey, I'm going up to middleweight. So like, what names do you see in your future, and what do you just think of the top of this division right now?
It's been really interesting because I think when I'm just, a little over, I'm 2.5 years into this sport, and I feel like when I first started fighting, middleweight was kind of dead almost. It was like not a lot going on. Adesanya had beat a bunch of guys, and it was kind of like, what's going on at middleweight? And then all of a sudden we had Adesanya Pereira, and then we have, DDP. We had Strickland in there for a little bit. We have all these guys coming up. Hamzat, Bilal's talking about moving up. Middleweight to me now is like one of, if not the most exciting divisions in the sport. And for me to be in this place is super fun. And now I'm fighting a ranked opponent. I'm looking forward to getting into the rankings and getting my name up in there. And so the focus for me is just continue to get better, improve. And I think I got a lot of work to do before I get to the top, but I'm ready to put that in, and it takes time. And so, I know what it takes to become a champion in wrestling and be the best in the world. And so I'm going to do the exact same thing in fighting, and it takes time. And so, as I mentioned initially, I'm only 2.5 years in as a professional. And I think that by the time I'm, 3.5, 4 years in, I'll be dominating the division and cleaning it out just as many great champions have before me. So that's what I'm looking to do. And there's a ton of great names up there that'll be exciting fights for me.
Co-main event this weekend, UFC Iowa, RDR versus, I'm going to give you a nickname this week. I'm going to call him Bo Big Body Nickal.
Let's go.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Always good to see you.